my name's Lynn Schooler, and I was born in Texas and to Alaska in 1969. And grew up in the interior, up around Anchorage, and then down in Seward, and came down to Juneau in 1986, and been here ever since. Lived on my boat for about 10 or 15 years of that, and then wound up living in a little cabin out at Amalga Harbor for 5 years, and then bought a piece of property nearby and built the house that I'm sitting in now about years ago. So this is where I live, about 25 miles north of Juneau. And I'm 66 years old. I'm single, don't have any family, live alone, which is a boon in a situation like this pandemic, and also a bit of a curse. I'm a writer and a filmmaker. I've been published in 14 languages, and until recently was writing pretty regularly for a Japanese magazine. And when the pandemic came along, I was working for the BBC on a natural history film that was supposed to be a 2-year project. And I was I have a farm in Hawaii, which is where I was in January when the pandemic started, and was laid off in March when I was en route back to Alaska to start working again. I got the message that the project had been canceled when I hit SeaTac on my way. So, but I had decided to head home anyway because of the pandemic was picking up then quite a bit. New York was really a mess by March, with body bags and trailers on the street and things. And I had to decide whether flying was a good idea, whether I wanted to try to ride it out in Hawaii or come back to Alaska. And I talked to some of my friends up here, and they said, you have 40 years of friendship here, so that would be a better place, because I don't really have a social network of any kind in Hawaii. I just go there and work. So I got on a plane and flew home and found myself unemployed and kind of isolated, becoming more so all the time. And boy, all the rest is recent history. It's settled into isolating. So yeah, who are you is kind of an existential question. I guess if I was Tlingit, I would start by naming all my ancestors and where they're from and everything. So I guess I'll just say that I come from a long line of farmers and ranchers and people of the earth, way back to the 1700s. And this is my home now. Out here, out the road. My first thought when I first heard of the COVID-19 in China, something told me that it was going to be serious. But I also thought that it would be handled. I take these things very seriously. Old enough to have lived through the polio epidemics as a child, and I have vivid memories. The schools being closed and public places being closed and no gatherings and so many of the same things that we have now. Coming back to school and the empty desks. Somebody never came back, or the kid that came back with a leg brace. Those things make an impression on me at an early age. So I took this seriously, but I also thought that it would be handled pretty much in the same way that we managed to handle Ebola and Zika and H1N1 and most of the outbreaks the last 25 years. That there was a system for this. So I wasn't worried. I was aware, but I wasn't worried. I had some faith that it would be approached in a reasonable manner, that we had the power to deal with these things. And of course, since then, we've learned that that wasn't the case. My perspective on the pandemic uh, altered pretty rapidly and radically from having, faith that we would be able to deal with it as we've dealt with other pandemics. One of genuine horror, anger, that when it became apparent that the people and the system that we depend on to deal with these things was completely broken, and that we were going to deal with the whole pandemic with nothing but magical thinking and lies. uh, that became even more disturbing than the chances of getting really ill. Um, that has been the most difficult thing of all to deal with for me, was having to acknowledge that uh, we're not very sensible people, that we don't always do the right thing. And that an awful lot of us are actually willing to break things and see hundreds of thousands of people die for political reasons. That's tough. That's kept me awake more nights than the odds of getting sick. I'm an asthmatic, and I'm in a reasonably risky group. It could be very serious personally, but I'm a pretty analytical person. I I figure percentages, and I look at things realistically. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of real research. I read medical journals and things like that. I don't get my information off Facebook.
Yes.
So I understand how viruses and vaccines and things like that work. I understand how big distribution systems work. In my youth, I worked for different organizations that handled a lot of materials and transportation and distribution. Those are just material, mechanical, factual systems that have enormous capabilities if they're run by smart people with a goal in mind. We haven't had that. And it's given me a very bleak outlook. I do want to say that I feel really lucky to be in Juneau. Our little local government, nobody who ran for office or wanted to sit on the city council or work at the hospital here ever thought about something like that.
Yeah.
I know we've got a plan for mass casualty events, presuming that there might be something bad happen on the cruise ships, and we've had some brushes, noroviruses and outbreaks on the cruise ships, bringing the plagues to town. But nobody, none of the people on our city council, on the assembly, were ever planning to have to deal with this, to have to, order people or ask people to wear a mask or order extra body bags or figure out, what do you do when the airport closes, things like that. This is way above our people's pay grades.
Yeah.
And they've done a good job. Yeah. You look at roughly 3% of the Juneau population has been infected at this point, and the rest of the state's 6%. In some parts of the country, it's 18%. So, the people of Juneau have by and large done this rather well.
Yeah.
That makes me really, really glad to be here. Like I say, I live alone. I've always been kind of a misanthrope, a little bit of a recluse. So isolating this much is a great leap from my normal life. Um, for the last 30 years, I've been a wilderness guide, specializing in photographers and film crews and, people with a mission. Um, so all summer long, I'd be in intense close quarters contact with a very small group of people, usually on a boat or in a camp somewhere for weeks at a time, working 18 hours a day. So when I could come home and be alone, it was a real blessing. I was really always happy to just get home and cook for one and, not have to take care of anybody and wander around in my underwear if I want. This isn't that different than my normal life. Uh, Psychologically, it's different, but other than not having dinner with friends a week or going downtown for Friday beers with the same group of guys I've been having beer with over 30 years, not that much has changed, in my social function or, my work. So the biggest change and the biggest difficulty for me personally, um, I was advised not to fly by medical people whose opinions I value quite a bit. And I was in the middle of converting a coffee farm to an avocado farm. I planted 200 avocado trees last year before the plague hit. And now I'm sitting here in the dark, with the sun going down at 3 o'clock, and I'm sitting instead of working. So I'm losing ground there. I'm losing a lot of ground and a lot of money and losing a lot of effort. My whole plan's being set back a lot. There's a real wild pig problem in Hawaii, and a neighbor went and inspected, and the pigs are killing the trees I planted. So, I'm literally losing a lot there, but I just accept it. I'm sitting more instead of working. Uh, the pandemic has actually aged me. I never thought of myself as a senior citizen before I suddenly found myself in, the high risk group. And now I'm being, instead of working, physically several hours a day, anything like, 6 to 10 hours a day, I sit more and I can feel my body deteriorating, and, at my age, once you lose it, you don't get it back. That's kind of troubled me some, you know. Like I say, the problem has been sitting, short days, the lousy weather, and the not wanting to be outside when it's blowing 60 and raining, you know. Uh, but the things that are helping me get through this are creativity. I've got a little woodworking shop, so I'm catching up on some woodworking projects. And since every day is the same, time has lost its meaning in some ways. I'm working on a little cabinet that I'm building out of wood I've been saving for 40 years. And it really doesn't matter if I take 1 hour to build a drawer or 12 hours to build the drawer. So I'm really able to just focus on the moment, the task at hand, cutting a set of dovetails or, making a fit just exactly right. I'm able to put in the time on creating something to make it better instead of wondering about how many man hours I'm going to have in the project. You know, uh, I'm trying to learn to read Japanese. You know, I'm trying to teach myself two of the three Japanese writing systems and a little basic grammar and all. I'm reading more, which is I know it's strange for somebody with several books published to say he doesn't read much, but for the last several years I haven't read a lot, and now I find myself reading for several hours a day. It's let me give myself permission to sit around and just read to no purpose. There's no goal of productivity. And in a way, that's making me more productive, you know, if that's not too obtuse, you know. So it's let me give myself permission not to be driven to get things accomplished. You know, I can spend, you know, half a day working on one photo caption if I want to, but when I'm done, I'll be happy with it. You know, and I'm happy about that. And another thing that's helped me get through this is there's been a couple young people in my life that surprisingly we're not related, and they have really kind of stepped up to take care of the old man. You know, they're offering to do shopping for me and reduce my exposure and bring me firewood if I need it and things like that. It was totally unexpected. You know, when I got home from Hawaii, I knew I was going to have to go into isolation immediately for a while. And when I got home, a young fisherman friend had completely stocked my house with food. You know, and it was really kind of funny because he works on a seiner, and I could tell he was shopping for a fishing crew because it's things like 8 pounds of bacon. You know, it was it was a mad Costco shopping event to feed one person. You know? But you know, he did it completely unasked. You know, I just got home and found out that somebody had thought of me, yeah, and prepared. You know, considering that I'm a senior citizen and presumably more vulnerable. Yeah, that was very touching. Yeah, and seeing other events of young people stepping up has really helped my spirits a lot. You know, my nephew owns a restaurant in Juneau, and so of course his business is just devastated. You know, he's just barely hanging on. And on Thanksgiving, he packaged 400 meals for people who didn't have enough to eat. Yeah, yeah,
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah,
Your story just reminds me a little bit of my own experience as the systems around us that are failing us. Um, it has been exceptionally beautiful to watch individuals stand up and
yeah,
be the light, you know, and um, I guess I'm someone who's experienced systems failing me most of my life in a variety of ways. And so I had not as much faith, I think, going into this, you know, that the systems were going to help us, you know, and at some of the heaviest moments, um, the caring of individuals has helped me have more hope in the things that are happening in the world. And personally, I honestly feel like uh, I'm a big fan of history and reading history and all the history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I even love reading bias history, you know, historical documents, because it all is. But um, I feel like sometimes our worst moments in history are also our best moments in history, because at the times that systems fail, people stand up.
yeah,
People speak up, people take action,
yeah,
people find the good purposely in the world. And so it was beautiful to hear that story of your nephew.
yeah.
Yeah.
On the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feed
And
400, have enough. Yeah.
which restaurant does he own
Uh,
again?
Al Lupo,
The what?
in Boca Al Lupo,
Oh, yeah.
the
Okay.
Italian restaurant that's there beside the old hotel
Yeah.
behind. Yeah. Now he's just baking bread mostly, doing takeout and a little bit, but it's a lot of my family's in restaurants, and it's a very, very difficult time. Yeah. So, but he's managed to keep most of his employees on. Yeah.
Nice.
Still, keeping the kids fed.
And I guess I should ask, uh, it's sometimes a controversial question for people, but are you going to be taking the vaccine when it's available, or have you already?
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
is the?
Yeah.
Okay.
You just show me where the line starts.
Yeah.
If anybody's concerned about the vaccination getting there or something, I'll drive them in.
Nice.
We can mask up, and I'll give anybody down to get it. No virus has ever been, no, herd immunity has never been reached without a vaccination. Like I said, I'm pretty pragmatic and pretty analytical. Vaccinations work. The science behind it is good science. Yeah. There's no chips in it. They're not putting a microchip in your brain. It's physics. It's plain old physics. It's good science. This mRNA is such a leap forward. This is incredible. I'll go out on a limb and say that within 30 years, maybe even 15 or 10, we'll be getting vaccinations that are designed to our genetic structure, individually tailored. And, the mRNA, there's no preservatives. That argument has to fall away. If you're worried about the mercury in a vaccination or something, then that's not there. It's not even a deactivated virus like so many of them are. There's no virus. It can't give you the virus. That's a real bright spot for me in all of this. This is a miraculous discovery. There's some brilliant people that put this together. We're lucky enough that, even though half the population is below average, there's way out on the other end, there's some really smart people who work really hard. Yeah. So yes, I'm going to get a vaccination as soon as I can. Yeah. Once this has passed, once we've got this under control again, and life returns back to something we could consider normal, it's going to speed some things up for me. I've always been aware of mortality and the past time thing, but this was the first time in a long time that it's been driven home to me that I don't have much time left, and that there's things I want to do and I better get about it. Yeah, if I would say the broader message, not just for me, but maybe for everybody, is that you need to figure out what you want and move toward it. There's going to be 500,000 families with a lot of regrets in the U.S. alone. Like 2 or 3 million in the world, maybe more. I don't project that yet. But if there's something you want, if there's something you want to tell somebody, if there's something you want to do or accomplish or someplace you want to go, don't put it off. Go for it. That's the biggest change for me at a personal level. I hope with all of my heart that the way the federal government has responded to this will become a study in how not to do it. I hope that this generation and the future generations will embrace science and expertise and a commitment to the good of community. I hope that the future will understand that this poisonous individualism that has permeated our society to the point where there doesn't seem to be the general concept of the common good. I hope that people understand the consequences of that. You know, people have to understand that we're all in this together. And if the majority of us aren't working for the good of the other people, that we're all going to have to pay for it. You know, this is probably a rough thing to say right now, but this isn't a bad pandemic. This isn't the big one. As bad as it is, you know, a 2% or a 2.5% mortality rate is not the big one. There's going to be one come along that's 10% or 20%. You know, smallpox was 60 to 70%. So this is not the big one. This is a dry run for the big one. And if we don't approach it with a common conviction to act for the good of everybody, then it's going to win. This is bad, you know, but we need to rewrite our economic system so it doesn't completely cave in on half the population.
Yeah.
Just because we stop buying stuff for a couple of weeks. You know, I don't know what that is. I'm not an economist, but you know, we've got too many people too close to disaster. And you know, when the bottom starts falling out, even those of us like myself who are incredibly fortunate, you know, and secure, it's going to cost us. It's going to cost everybody. So, you know, the most conservative politician now should understand that our healthcare system is a national security issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't just whether, you know, it's good for Pfizer or, you know, you can afford your insurance premium or anything like that. It's a national security issue.
Yeah.
We are in such a weakened state right now. You know, as a nation, we are absolutely as vulnerable now as we have ever been since the Civil War. Yeah. From many, many directions. All of these things are not just a matter of moral or social responsibility, they're political. There's absolutely no point in having an F-35 jet if something like this can come along and close your cities down.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, you know, this is just the practice run for the big one. And I don't think that most of the world realizes that there's literally hundreds of thousands of viruses in the world. And, you know, I believe the last study I read that there was guesstimated to be over 300,000, potentially up more towards 500,000 different viruses in the world. And we just simply either haven't come in contact with them or have had limited contact with them. And along with population growth and resource extraction processes is going to make us come in contact with them more and then spread more. And I don't think people realize when they are doing a comparison of the 1918 flu, that there was only a little less than 2 billion people on the planet at that time. And we did not, and we had no fast travel in the same way that we have now. And so having more people traveling more and faster than we ever have as a species in our existence is dangerous. And we may have to rethink all of those systems.
Well, yes, we have to think primarily about response systems first,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And we've shown what doesn't work, by golly. We've totally shown what doesn't, you know. So let the experts plan it, you know, and stick
Yeah.
to them, you know. Spend $1 trillion being ready for these sort of things. You know, Ebola was 90% fatal, but it got contained because there was a system that experts put into action and contained it. It's still out there. There's still Ebola outbreaks, you know, annually in Africa, but the system to contain them works. Yeah. And a virus is just a virus. You know, it's not an evil mastermind.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of genetic code wrapped in a fat.
Yeah.
It's a physical problem that can be physically addressed. You know, it's not a spiritual matter. You know, just act smart. Let the smart people tell us how to do it. You know? And then understand that, you know, if I can keep from getting it, it keeps me from spreading it. Figure out what you want and do it now. You know? Yeah. So, be smart. You know? Listen to old smart people.